People like to talk about citizens, but services are not based on citizenship. Business services are based on presence. And so I want to get away from the focus on citizenship and talk about presence, because when you need water, you don't ask, hey, are you a citizen? What do you get to get a drink of water? When you need to breathe, you don't ask whether you're a citizen when you get clean air. And so this is why I'm going to talk about the impact on people, and specifically the people who live in the unincorporated areas of the county. Because the municipalities, Little Rock, North Little Rock, Jacksonville, Sherwood, Alexander, and Wrightsville, and Maumelle all have their own municipal governments. But if you are part of the 60,000 plus people who live in the unincorporated areas, Pulaski County government is the government that is supposed to protect your health, safety, and welfare. So I'm going to talk about that. The second thing I want to do is I want to thank some people who made this possible. Yes, I'm hosting it, but I am not the person who did most work. Steve Nowacek has been the lead planner. Stand up, Steve. Come on, stand. You know who you are. And he didn't want me to do that, but I'm a preacher, and I believe that ingratitude is a sin, so I'm not going to have that happen. Valerie Jean Johnson Pruitt, I did call her full name, to be forever known by me as Church Lady, is my executive assistant. She's the lady back there welcoming people. Also, I know that that Charles Bolden and Claudius Johnson, I see Claudius Johnson over there in the back rear corner. Charles Bolden is outside. Michael Nellums is outside helping, and Steve Walden is up here at the front. Steve, stand up, Steve, stand up, Steve, stand up, Steve, stand up, Steve. Now you know who's done the work. Yes, Valerie. I called Charles Bolden. There he is. Raise his hand up. There you are. And there's Michael. Now, here's what's going to happen. I have asked some subject matter experts to come and help us understand the implications of what we're talking about. They're going to each talk for a few minutes, and after each one finishes talking, I'm going to moderate questions and answers. Now, let me remind you of something. This is not a protest. This is not a political rally. This is an informational gathering. If you have a question, please put it to us. If you have a speech, please wait until you're on the program. Okay? Is that fair? Yes. Okay. Now, I have been a preacher long enough and have officiated funerals so that people who were not on the program showed up and said speeches that were longer than the eulogy. Okay? And even though the program had a minute time, they got up and said that, and I've been the pastor who had to get them to sit down, and they won't sit down, and then people look at me and like, now please don't put me in the position to ask you to let somebody else talk, please, okay? If you have a question, put the question to us. I want to acknowledge Justice of the Peace Julie Blackwood, who just walked in. Julie Blackwood has been one of the Justices of the Peace who has been most engaged in county government about this issue, and she has suffered more early morning, late night phone calls and email messages from me than anybody else in this room except for my staff. And unfortunately for her, she's not over that, because I'm going to keep doing it. But I want to thank her for being patient with us as we try to talk about this, because there has been, and here's my beginning speech, we are in an area where 10 years ago, you didn't understand, you didn't hear talks about AI. That's 2016, okay? Now AI is the driving thing, and we're talking about it. We're talking about it because we're using it. But we're talking about it without thinking about what the implications of it are and how it will impact the way we live and the way we operate as a county, how it impacts county government. And so I have asked several people to come today and help us understand that. Help us understand the need for transparency. Hello? And when I say transparency, I mean let's not have people who are going to be impacted by these things be the last folks to know and the folks who have to suffer. Let's not have people who pay their taxes be the last person to find out that the people who are supposed to be collecting taxes have made a deal not to get taxes from folks who are the richest folks in the world. Hello? And let's not have people who want to do these things to us tell us to trust them when they secretly agree with the energy companies to supercharge our grid, take our water, stick us with bills, raise our road costs, and raise our fire hazard and our public safety costs, and then tell us, hey, trust us. So transparency is going to be a factor. I have asked Al Drinkwater here to come talk about that, about transparency and about the electrical grid implications. Al Drinkwater knows more about electrical grid stuff than I can tell you, and I want to know. But he helped me understand, hey, when you talk about 10 megawatts, I mean, that's the amount of load that's comparable to what it takes to power 7,500 to 10,000 homes. The Avayo AI campus that is scheduled for Wrightsville will have an opening load projected at 150 megawatts. 15 times 10. At total build out, it's supposed to be 1.1 gigawatt. 1 gigawatt is comparable to the electrical load that you would have of a commercial nuclear power plant. Right outside, a mile from Daisy Bates Elementary School and 1.6 miles from the Wrightsville community. So I'm going to ask Al Drinkwater to talk about that. Retired Chief of Fire Department Greg Summers is going to talk about the fire hazards. You haven't heard anybody talk about fire hazards, have you? Guess what? You're going to today. Because putting out a lithium battery fire is a whole lot different from putting out a grass fire or a fire at a Walmart store. Richard H. Mays, there are two Richard Mays in Pulaski County. Richard H. Mays is going to talk about what happens, what we have to think about in regulating. How do we enforce the regulatory scheme on something like this? How do we enforce our codes? And how do we need to rethink our codes? And finally, Pulaski County Sheriff Eric Higgins is going to talk about the public safety law enforcement aspect of this. If you're going to ask 500 to 1,000 transient workers to come into the county to work, you're going to have to expect some of them not to get along every once in a while. Hello? What's the law enforcement perspective on this? How does the law enforcement respond? But also, how do you protect this if the county sheriff hasn't been engaged on what kind of security they're going to have on the front end? Hello? So, that's the thing. After each person speaks, I'll have a short Q&A. Next person will speak. After all of the spoken, we'll go home. Hello? We'll go home no later than 3:30. It's 1:40 now. It's time for me to stop. Al Drinkwater is the first speaker. Al Drinkwater is from Bigelow, and he knows more about electrical stuff than anybody else I can talk to. Al, you got the floor.
Okay. Well, as this is a new area for us, for me, and I don't claim to be an expert on data centers. I have a history in environment, energy, and economic development. And I see all of those three playing out in large part across the board here with data centers. I'm going to have to get on my glasses because I want to stay with some of the points that I put down to try to share with you. We've got to start also by saying that I'm not against data centers. Data centers are a necessary part of our contemporary information technology society. And we have become so dependent on information systems that we require data centers. So we have to first look in the mirror and confer with that person about the needs and the wants that we have and what we take for granted that someone else is going to take care of for us. And a lot of times we'll find ourselves seeking our voice at that point. And we should, and our voice is best when it is, it's most effective when it's respectful, knowledgeable, strong, and tenacious. I wonder, no. Okay, I'm going to struggle. But we're going to make it.
Eat your mic.
Do what? Okay.
There you go. Eat your mic.
I'm going to get my mic up here, and then I'm going to try to see. That's two different things. Okay. There are some recurring points that come up with data centers that are extremely important in Arkansas and all across the country. Those points to me that I see over and over again, transparency leads the way. Disproportionate is another thing that leads the way, especially with these hyperscale data centers. Water use, noise, jobs, tax impacts. Those are the big ones to me that I see over and over again in communities from the East Coast to the West Coast dealing with data centers and this new big boom and build out that the tech companies have just really undergone in the past few years. They've had data centers for years and years, but the past few years they've really been building out. The economic development is typically done behind closed doors in secrecy, working with the company to bring that company in. They work for a year or two or three with somebody. They get all the agreements together. They make the announcement, the plant's coming to your town, going to be built in the industrial park. It's going to have 100 jobs. They're going to invest $30 million and $10 million more in a few years, maybe something like that, a few more jobs. You get that announcement and you didn't know anything about it, and it's perfectly normal. It happens. You're glad, new investment, new jobs, everything's going along pretty well. And that's very normal. So what's the difference with the data centers? It's disproportionality more than anything else. Disproportionality. Government officials and developers that don't recognize that have failed their mission to serve the people that they're working with because they are not like anything else that has come along before. We have to, excuse me again, I'm going to push on here and try to get through it on time. The disproportionate part of this, the cost in the data centers, is more disproportionate than anything that we've ever seen. If you look at the steel mills in Mississippi County, you're looking at $3 billion for the Big River Steel. They have 1,700 jobs in that facility. Look at the amount that's being proposed for Pulaski County. If you had that same money focused on steel plants in Pulaski County, you'd overtake Mississippi County as the #1 steel producing county in America. And the jobs would be there with it. But they're not with data centers. It took Mississippi County almost 40 years to get there, and Pulaski County could do it in a year. That's kind of disproportionate. Wages, in a data center, you're looking average. These are average numbers. They weren't released by the chamber or by the Economic Development Commission. But $67,000 is normal for a data center average worker wage. $67,000, pretty good. Steel plants around $100,000. That's Big River. It's about, are 10 times more jobs. If there were 10 times more jobs at data centers, then that would be okay, but they're not. And so there's where you go. Data centers, data centers produce less jobs per dollar invested than a lot of the, most of the other industries, any of the other industries that I know of. At full build out, $21 billion, that would place job generation about 23 jobs per $1 billion. In comparison, Big River Steel generates 500 jobs per $1 billion. And they're a very capital-intensive organization, too. I make that point because when they came in, they were the most capital-intensive investment that we'd had in Arkansas up to that time. So very capital-intensive. But they produce a lot more jobs and better-paying jobs than the data centers do. Water's another problem. They use a lot of water, and I'm going to skip through here pretty quick. We just saw the announcement up in Faulkner County months ago, I guess now, but coming to a community that has to ration its water to its citizens. They've had to do that several times this year. Right. Don't have enough water to drink, and they're bringing in an extremely thirsty industry. There's no reason for any data center, whether Pulaski County where you got more water or Faulkner County where you don't, to not run the cooling system on those data centers with wastewater. There's no reason. And no data center out there that could not be run on wastewater. May take a little additional treatment from the time it's discharged from the NPDES treatment plant to the time it's used as cooling water, but it would just be a slight upgrade, maybe for scaling or something like that, going into the cooling system. So no reason at all ever to use anything but wastewater. Now, the tax revenue for the data centers is the big plus, because you got this huge investment, so your ad valorem taxes should go way up. Except that in many cases, the data centers are using a financing mechanism in Arkansas and other states that allow them to not pay ad valorem taxes, property taxes. And there is in that law a requirement that everybody that uses that pays at least 35% of what they would have otherwise paid in property tax in an in lieu of payment for the property taxes. So it's not property taxes, it's just a payment in lieu of, minimum of 35%. Now you'd think that the guys sitting at the table would be representing us on how much tax in lieu of we get. So what would your guess be that they're going to try to get out of them? Maybe 80, 90%? Maybe 50, 60%? You'd be wrong. 35% is what they negotiated, just first run right out of the chute. 35%, the lowest allowed by law. And these guys are sitting across the table from the richest companies in the world. Yep. And we give them the low ball on taxes for our community. What are we doing? Okay, that's and I understand if you're trying to recruit a very good employer, a really good employer, which is where Arkansas gets most of its impact from economic development, is jobs and good jobs. If you were trying to recruit a really good employer that would employ hundreds and hundreds or perhaps thousands of people, then you'd want to do what you could, and that 35% is a good place to play it right there. But when you're recruiting somebody that produces no jobs, which is where most Arkansas benefit comes from, those jobs, and you lowball it with the most wealthy companies in the world, what are we thinking? What are we thinking? So I'm going to get on to electric. Data centers are disproportionate users of electricity, recruiting several large disproportionate users of electricity at a time when large base load of electric production capacity is going offline, is being scuttled, when without anything to replace it at this time, doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? So we're looking at 2 coal-fired power plants being taken down, bringing in all of these major users. So we're going to have to replace those coal-fired power plants. We know that. We're also going to have to pay for all of the electricity that these data centers are going to use in addition to that. Now, who's paying for that electricity? It's a big question, and your Public Service Commission has not got very good answers for you about how they're keeping track of who's paying for what. And a lot of the things there are not transparent. They have access to it, but you don't. And that's something that has to change. Historically, utilities have built plants. Well, I need to go back to this. For years, those engaged in economic development have recruited data centers. It's not surprising that we saw them all move to pressure the state legislature to pass Act 373 of 2025. And y'all don't know what that is perhaps, but I'm going to tell you. Historically, utilities have built power plants that started delivering electricity from those plants to electric users. The utilities would bill the users for that electricity. It was a situation where you had to deliver the product, a kilowatt hour, and then charge the customer for that kilowatt hour. Now, all of that changed in 2025 with the passage of Act 373. That new law gives utilities the ability to begin charging ratepayers for new power plants before they receive any electricity from that plant. Right. The fact that utilities can start billing ratepayers for electricity from a new plant when the utility starts thinking about a feasibility study for that plant, that's called a twinkle in your eye, if you don't know what that is. That means that ratepayers will be paying for electricity from a power plant for many years before they receive any electricity from that plant. Feasibility studies have a way of going south. They may not receive any electricity. Right. Any given person may die before they receive any electricity from that plant. Right. So people are going to be paying for electricity that they never receive under this law. It's a very, very bad law. There's some good idea. There's one good idea in that law, and that is to keep the overall cost of a power plant down by paying for it as you go along. That's a good idea. But how do you work it out so that it's fair for everybody? The people here are the people here in Arkansas, in this room, in Pulaski County, are the ones that our people should be working to advance the needs of, not some utility in New Orleans. Okay, I'm just saying, I'm not taking a hit at anybody. I'm just saying, if you're going to work for somebody, it's the people that you need to be working for first. There was an understanding of the disproportionate size of data centers and the disproportionate need for electricity, and that's what caused this act to come into place, is getting ready for the build-out, because can you imagine trying to finance 2 new replacements for those coal-fired power plants, plus some other plants that needed to come online to support that as well. Arkansas is growing, and these data centers at the same time. So financing was a big issue for utilities. And this gives them a workaround to put that financing on the back of people as opposed to taking care of it the way it's normally been taken care of. When you go from, I'm gonna wrap up here pretty quick, but when you go from the initial $6 billion plant to a $21 billion plant, and you go to a gigawatt of electricity, you're talking about all the electricity, 1.1 gigawatts maybe, something, but you're talking about all the residential electricity that the whole state of Arkansas needs. Right. From one plant, one data center. Now, that's disproportionate, and you have to keep that in mind. Data centers are a 24-hour-a-day operation, 365. They're a great base load for an electric utility. That type of load requires a dependable, dispatchable electricity, and it's not something that can be served by solar or wind. It's something that solar especially works great for helping with peaking. It has a fit that's natural right there in the peaking cycle. Every day there's a cycle of electricity that runs just like a big U, a couple of U's there. This one goes down at night, this one goes up in the day, and the solar operates in the day, and you can put that solar right in that peak and help out as it moves across. So as long as the utility company is paying, if they're buying it from outside, if they're paying a reasonable cost, a cost that represents what they're actually avoiding, the avoided cost of fuel is really the only thing that's being avoided. Why? Because those plants that back that solar up and that keep you running at night have to run all the time anyway. So you didn't save a nickel over here, and you're paying everything over here. So you have to be very careful how you load solar into a utility. And I think we've seen that across the country with some of the problems that have broken out in bad weather times. But the solar fits really nicely into a peaking arrangement, but it does not fit anywhere else. When you add batteries, you can get a day, or not even, maybe a day, not a day, but usually the systems that you see say something like a day. You double the price of that solar system by adding that battery. So to start with, solar systems are twice as expensive as a gas-fired system, okay? Twice as expensive per megawatt of production as a gas-fired system. You add the batteries, you double that again. A lot of people think, and a lot of people don't know, everybody knows that solar doesn't make electricity at night. But a lot of people don't really quite understand that solar does not make very much electricity in the morning, early, and it doesn't make much electricity in the evening, late. Most people will say, when I've asked them, and I have asked them, how many solar systems does it take to replace a gas system? And they say 2. That's not correct. It takes 4, okay? Your solar runs about 20%, and your gas is going to run 80 to 90% of capacity. So that's what you're looking at. So you're talking about increasing the cost that you put into service, your capital costs that you put into service. What I'm gonna wind up with this. Utilities in Arkansas build power systems to serve their ratepayers and receive a rate of return. It's usually around 9%, rate of return on equity. It's usually around 9% for those systems, regardless of how efficient or inefficient they are. The question is, would the utility rather take $1,000 of your money, go to the bank, and draw 9% interest on it? Or would they rather take $1 million of your money, go to the bank, and draw 9% interest on it? This is something that the Public Service Commission needs to be more transparent about. What is the overall build in the capital base that produces the equity? Because we know every company, private company, is in business to make money. And I don't hold that against them at all. But when you have a utility and you have a monopoly, then the people have to see what's going on, because they're the ones that are paying for that monopoly. It's not just the utility, it's the monopoly franchise that gives them a full market on everything, all the electricity that's sold here. And because of that, transparency should be increased much through the Public Service Commission about every contract where we're buying electricity or we're building capital, and how that capital, including backup capacity for solar, wind, and any other alternatives, and I am a big believer in alternatives, if they fit, okay? I'm working on a project in northwest Arkansas right now that is an alternative energy project. I love them. They have to fit. And when you put them into the utilities, then you don't want anything hidden from the people who are paying for it. If you're going to charge you for all those things, they need to show the receipts. So we need some changes in legislation, and we need a big improvement in transparency. That's all I've got.
Keep the mic, keep the mic, keep the mic, keep the mic, because we got Q&A. What questions do you have of Al Drinkwater? Questions? Raise your hand. I'm coming first. I'm go work from the back. Come forward. Come from back. Come forward.
I just want to inquire about the jobs. I've been reading that Google is wanting to bring in. They're always talking about hiring, jobs and things of that nature. But what I'm hearing everywhere is that they're not offering jobs. They're bringing in teams from Google and stuff like that. It's not necessarily going to have a hiring pool here. Could you give some more clarity on that?
Mm-hmm. One of the important things, if you've got a Google or you've got a big tech company from California or Virginia or someplace, and they come in, the likelihood is that they do have some people that are already in their hiring arrangement that they have identified as managing these facilities. They're not just going to go on the street in Little Rock and pick up somebody and go manage their facility. You're going to have to be the right person, and that person may have applied with them. They live in Little Rock. The data center is coming here, and they get the job, and that'll be great. But a lot of that will be from other places. They'll bring those in. There are a few jobs to start with, and several of them are going to be probably coming from other places. And I didn't mention, but data centers are particularly adept at putting AI to work in them. So what we start out with jobs today, 2 or 3 years from now, those jobs may diminish just simply because of the AI that's running there.
So hands over here. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Judge Griffin. Thank you for hosting this venue. Yes, ma'am. Now, I'm going to piggyback. I know you electrical, but I'm going to draw in the question about the water company. I listened to a meeting from the constituents in Riceville last week when they were talking about, the center and what it's going to detail for them, that they have a volunteer fire department. If a fire break out, then the surrounding fire department have to come. Well, they got to get there. And with this electrical, which we already bearing the expense of electrical right now, and I agree with you on why should we use entity in Louisiana when we can have it here. But my question is, and I'm gonna throw some Bible in here. I know. Let me get this, and it'll lead to the question. The Bible said it won't be water this time, but it'll be fire. Break out a fire. What are the people down in Hinckley and Riceville? How is that going to affect them?
Yeah, and the fire's above my pay grade. Okay. I think we've got somebody here that's going to talk about that in a minute.
God Chief Summers is coming up next.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Question here and then going forward.
Can we legislate that they build in mitigation measures to recapture some of this heat that they're off-gassing so that it won't become a heat island in the middle of tornado season? If they're using up so much electricity and then just basically releasing it into the air, with all that big brain power, they can't find a way to recapture some of that heat and also to be efficient with some of that power and reuse some of that power, since basically power plants are just heating up things to make power. If they've got the heat, can't they make power with it? Can't we legislate that they're required to recapture X amount of the power that they use and the heat that they generate?
Okay, I'm not sure I quite...
Can we as a state legislate that the utilities use some of the power that is produced by the heat that is used in those data centers to regenerate power and lower the cost and lower the energy usage?
Brilliant question. Absolutely brilliant question. And the legislature can do whatever it wants to. Getting them to do it is the big hill to climb. But the smart thing to do would be, we know that there's this huge amount of heat that's being lost there, and it's being evaporated in some cases. It's being handled otherwise in other cases, but you see that heat being rejected out of that system, huge amount of it. And it does not have to be high temperature heat in order to make power. So they could make power and they could send it right back onto the grid. Yes, ma'am.
2 more questions.
What is the possibility of having a completely closed-loop system regarding electricity and the water and sewage and everything involved in the utilities?
Okay, I think you mean closed loop by...
Closed loop on the cooling side.
On the cooling side.
On the electrical side.
Okay, on the cooling side, closed loop, yes. But here, the situation with cooling
And
is always
electrical.
you're going to be rejecting heat out of that system one way or the other. You're either going to have a refrigerant system where you're cooling everything and bringing that out. You'll put it through a chiller, it'll go back, but that heat will be rejected out of the chiller.
Got 2 questions there. I know you have more questions, but I've got a 2-hour window. I've got to try to make the room for the next speaker. One last question.
Thank you.
Chief Summers, you're on deck.
My question is in regard to the heat as well. We didn't learn until Quorum Court this last Tuesday, and I believe it was Dimitri that let us know, or yes, because they live there, that these 2 data centers are literally 10 miles apart.
Less than that.
Right? Now, when you look up what goes on with the data centers and you see that the heat is 6 miles around each one, it's going to make that heat overlap right there in that area. So we have to do something in regard. Yeah, see, they didn't even tell us where they were.
Yeah. So your concern is microclimate changes.
Microclimate changes, this is on a wetland. You know, we're the natural state. This is on a wetland, and so we don't know what's going to happen to all the ecosystems that are going to be affected in that range.
Yeah, when you're needing this kind of heat rejection, then there probably needs to be something in our environmental quality permitting or somewhere that looks at that and says, okay, we're going to have this kind of an impact on the community. But really, perhaps Pulaski County and your planning board is the best place to do that. And say, we're going to have a hyperscale data center, we're going to have hyper cooling system that goes along with it, then we need to look at what the impact is. It's not just your normal setback that gets involved in this, because this changes things for a good way. I'm going to tell a little story real quick. Going to past Russellville, going to Northwest Arkansas. I used to go to Northwest Arkansas a lot, still do quite a bit. But it was in the middle of the winter. It was a snowstorm. There was snow, not too much, ice, a little on the sleety and everything. I crossed the lane, hit a little bitty bump of ice there, I thought, and just turned around and around and around, looking a big truck right in the face, and I finally got the thing landed over on the side. Came back the next week, about 7-8 days later, did the same thing, about the same climate conditions, turned around and around and around there again. I got to thinking, something's wrong here. What's going on? And I got to checking, and it's a known climate zone there that comes from the utility, okay? And during cold weather, you're liable to get ice on that spot quicker than you will anywhere else. Right. So those climate changes, those microclimate changes are real. And in this case, it's going to be more heat, but it could be water as well, because the ones that use evaporative cooling, of course, you're going to have a lot of water in the air.
Thank you. Al Drinkwater, thank you very much. Is this helpful? Is this helpful? Have you heard this before? Okay, the question is, if you haven't heard it before, is it an accident? No. You haven't heard it before because the people who are responsible for making sure we know don't want you to know. You haven't heard the next part before either. You haven't heard the fire impacts. You haven't heard about the fire response and suppression impacts. Chief Greg Summers is retired fire chief of the city of Little Rock. He went down to Waco and did the same thing. He'd come back because Nestor stayed at home. Chief Greg Summers, come and talk with us about the fire response and suppression impacts that go along with data centers and AI campuses. And he's got the receipts.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Just kind of speak on me just a little bit. I'm from Pine Bluff originally. I spent 35 years with the Little Rock Fire Department, the last 10 as the fire chief. Retired in 2018, and my wife put me to work at New York Life selling insurance, and I really didn't like it. And I tell you, I failed a securities test twice, and it never happened to me before in my life. And when I failed it the last time, I missed it by 2 points. I put the book in the back of my truck on the floor, never picked it up again, and didn't tell her that I was a finalist for Waco Fire. She didn't know until I took the job. But I knew I had HGTV in my back pocket because she loved that show. But just to kind of speak to you a little bit about this, from a fire chief's perspective, the concern is not the technology itself, but the mismatch that you have between the massive facilities and the capabilities of the unincorporated or volunteer fire departments and the suburban fire departments. We're not capable, and that's just a fact. So we're going to talk about, let's go to the next slide, please. We're going to talk about the HIDI challenge, why unincorporated areas, the volunteer fire department capacity, the lithium ion, and the best fire risk, the health and hazmat exposures, pre-approval studies, response protocols, the nanowire solution, which is not a sale pitch, but just kind of give you an idea of what we're working on in this industry to try to combat these EV fires, these lithium-ion battery fires, and the data centers and the cryptocurrency mining pieces. And then we're going to have some answers and questions and next steps if you want to take advantage of that. Next slide. So when you look about when you talk about the local codes, they were not built for new industrial like the data centers. And we're talking about unincorporated areas. In Pulaski County, in any county that's unincorporated in this country, they choose these locations for a particular reason. The codes are not necessarily enforced.
Right.
When I was in the fire chief in Little Rock, you could not burn within the city limits, but you could burn outside the city limits. You could not, if you wanted to build inside the city, you had to have a burn permit to do so. In the county, you don't. That's just on a minor scale. And when you talk about the capability mismatch, fire departments, volunteer fire departments throughout this country struggle every day for staffing. Not just in Pulaski County or any county, but throughout this country, they struggle for staffing. Not only do they struggle for staffing, but they struggle for equipment.
Right.
I can't tell you how much equipment that we donated to local volunteer fire departments, and I'm talking about old equipment that we weren't using anymore. They don't have the financial capacity to pay for the stuff that you can pay for on the municipal side. Then you talk about the minimum zoning, the weak code enforcement. I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with the state fire marshal who I used to work with the city of Little Rock, who was retiring as a state fire marshal. And he made it very clear that they do not enforce the fire code in the county. They do not enforce the fire code in the county. So why would you try to build one in a suburban environment where you got to meet certain requirements? Now, what they're doing in Little Rock now, I can't speak to that because I don't know. But I do know as a fire chief, that would be my concern of my capacity to put my firefighters on the scene safely and extinguish these fires. Next slide. So you're looking at why in unincorporated areas. The land cost is cheaper. You don't have much pushback. Somebody just made the statement a moment ago about selling, because if you own property, let's just say you've owned 300 acres, and somebody came in and you've not done anything with this in your family for the last 60 years, and somebody offer you a couple of $1 million for that land, how likely are you to hold on to it? And you got these billion-dollar agencies coming in and taking advantage of that. The minimum zoning, I just talked about that. It doesn't exist. It does not exist. Talking to the sheriff back there, what are we gonna do in Pulaski County? How are we gonna extinguish these fires? And the secret is, does anybody know what agent you can use to extinguish a lithium-ion battery fire? You don't know? Excuse me?
What agent?
Yeah, what extinguishing agent can you use to extinguish a lithium-ion battery fire? You got Class A for combustibles like paper and wood. You got Class C for electrical. You got Class D for precious metals. What can you use? You got Class B for gases, fuel.
A phone without PFAS.
Excuse me?
A phone without PFAS, forever chemicals.
Okay, you're right. That would be great. But who does it? Who has that? It doesn't exist. To put these fires out, you got to have hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water. And when I say put it out, I mean cooling it, because you're not going to extinguish it. What you're going to do, you're going to cool that fire down, and it has a propensity of reigniting.
Yes.
In the city of New York, you can no longer keep e-bikes inside of a structure. You have to keep them outside, because when they catch on fire, you can't put them out. Next slide, please. So I just talked about the nationwide volunteer fire department staffing shortages, but we have a limited experience with these types of facilities, not just in the county, but in the cities throughout this country. We have a limited experience with it. And when we go in with our personal protective equipment on, and we start breathing this stuff, you know, firefighters have cancer more than anybody else. And when you talk about PFAS, it's in the PPE right now. Mm-hmm. So we have an enormous challenge of how we can protect the firefighters. I'm just talking about the firefighters. I'm not talking about the community, because we can't protect the firefighters. Guess what? We can't protect the community either.
Right.
And that's most important. We got to be able to do that. Few crews train on high voltage substation and data center infrastructure. Now we've trained on how to try to put out a car fire. We've trained on the combustible contents of homes from 1950 to today, when you got a bunch of hydrocarbons that you didn't have years ago. So we train on that, but we have not trained on the lithium-ion batteries fires. We're gonna put the water on it and hope it goes out, but we knowing all the time that it doesn't. So we're looking for methods to make sure that we can accomplish that. And then you talk about the rural communities. You don't have the water supply.
Right.
It does not exist. When you look at flow charts, you want to get 250 gallons, 500 gallons per minute, 1,000 gallons per minute. When you want to accomplish that, you cannot accomplish that in a rural environment. When that tanker shows up, that volunteer fire department, when that water tanker shows up to supply that fire engine, that outdated fire engine, because it's not new.
Hello.
Okay? They've got 4,000 gallons of water. Just to give you an example, I took a couple of notes, and I just want to share this with you. So you're talking about less than 1 minute on a 2,000, you got a 2,000 square foot residential structure. You show up, you got 750 gallons of water on board before you even hook up to an hydrant, and you're trying to accomplish putting this fire out. It lasts for 1 to 2 minutes. That's 750 gallons. Put that in perspective to these data centers and the amount of water it's going to require to cool them.
Right.
Let's understand that. Cool the fire. And hope and pray that it does not reignite, because these guys are going to be on the scene for a long time. You had a question about other fire departments responding. It's called mutual aid. Mutual aid. So when Wrightsville responds to a fire, and they're supposed to, now let me say this, when I was a fire chief many, many years ago in 2018, they're supposed to get on the scene and then notify dispatch that they need help. But 99% of the time, they will call before they even get to the fire station, because guess what? They're not at the firehouse.
Right,
They're at home.
right.
So when they go to the fire station to get that fire truck, if it cranks up and start, they can come. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah, yeah.
These are just the facts. It's no slap against volunteer firefighters or what they up against. I wish it was better for them, but it's not. And it's not just in this community, it's throughout the country. So there's no hydrant systems in there.
Right.
And if it is, it does not have a 500 GPM capacity
500 gallons per minute, right?
per minute, gallons per minute. In a data center, you're gonna need much more than that. Next slide, please. So when you talk about these large battery and data center fires, their fires behave like nothing like a structure fire. We could show up in a living room fire, and that's just that one room, and we can knock that fire down from outside and knock it down within 2 minutes. Using a fire hydrant, of course, not the 750 gallons you have on your engine, but we can knock that fire down quickly. You can't do that. When that lithium-ion battery gets in the thermal runway, that means one cell ignites and the other cells start igniting.
Right.
And once that happens, it's over with. All you're trying to do at that point is, let's see what we can do to protect this exposure, protect this exposure, protect that exposure, and watch this burn. So, and I'm gonna say this also, because I want to be transparent. If I was employed as a fire chief, the Little Rock Fire Department today, I wouldn't be here talking about this.
You couldn't.
I couldn't.
Right. The mayor would fire you.
I couldn't talk about it. I mean, I can give you my assessment, not you, but the people that I would report to. I can give you my assessment of what I think we need and what I think we shouldn't do, but I couldn't come and talk to you about it. If I wanted to continue to work, I couldn't.
Right.
So I'm just giving you these facts to consider, and these facilities are coming into our communities, and they're not paying for it. If they really want to exist, the county, they should establish the county 15 fire departments,
Yep.
400 personnel, every piece of equipment they need, and the capabilities to extinguish the lithium-ion battery fires. And it's called impact fees, and you've heard it.
Yeah.
If you want to exist in our community, then we need impact fees, and that's what these impact fees look like.
Yeah.
When Saracen Casino built the casino in Pine Bluff, they built a fire station right across the street from it. They built a fire station right across the street. Next slide.
Oh, yeah.
So when we talk about exposure, this is what we are exposed to on any given day as a firefighter. Hydrogen, carbon monoxide, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't see it. Hydrogen fluoride, volatile organics, and combustible gases. So how do we protect not just the firefighters, but how do we protect our communities? And we have to be able to do that if these facilities are going to exist within our communities. Yes, they're bringing some type of money. I get that, and I can support that. But what I cannot support firefighters or our community being placed in danger.
Right.
Because of that.
Right. Right.
Next slide. So before anything is issued, a permit, you should have done a fire service impact study. How does it impact the fire department?
Yeah.
What does that look like? And then your subject matter experts are telling the individuals, these companies, what that looks like. And then the people that are making the decision saying, well, if we're going to put them there, this is what you've got to do. If you want this facility right here, they had to follow the fire code to build this facility. They couldn't deviate from the fire code. If it required 4 stories, 5 stories or more, requires a sprinkler system, they couldn't say, well, can we have an exemption and put a sprinkler system in? No, you cannot. Emergency response capability study. How are we going to get there in an unincorporated area or in a suburban area? How are we going to get there?
Yeah.
What type of equipment do we have? And they should be invested from the day they start, from that point forever on. You said forever chemicals, I'm talking about forever financial support.
Right.
While they exist.
Right.
Because guess what? Fire trucks don't last forever. And I can tell you right now, a engine, the difference between an engine and a ladder truck, you know, the one with the big ladder on it, but the engine costs you $950,000. The ladder trucks cost you 1.5 to 1.7 million. And it used to be 12 to 18 months turnaround. Now it's 24 to 36 month turnaround because of the bill, because of COVID and the supply chain issues. All that changed. And the price goes up about 15 to 20% every year. So you got to have a replacement plan in play. And typically you want your fire trucks to exist for 10 years in front line and 5 years in reserve. That means you get 15 years out of them. But if you don't have that type of commitment, how are you going to fight these fires if they happen?
Right.
You need to do a water supply analysis. In order for us to achieve ISO Class 1 in Little Rock, we had to have a top-notch water system. And the water system is graded up to 50 points, the fire department is graded up to 40 points, and then your dispatch system is graded up to 10 points. That's 100 points total. Our water supply was right at 50%. We got all 50 points in Little Rock. That's why we're a Class 1 fire department, because of the fire department, the staffing, our response times, getting people on the scene. Just on a regular 2,000 square foot structure fire, you want to get at least 15 people on the scene within 8 minutes, 90% of the time. There's nowhere in this city that we can't accomplish that. So you have to have those types of studies to understand what you're working with. Then you got to look at your hazmat assessment. Most agencies do not have a dedicated hazmat team. Little Rock has a dedicated hazmat unit. They respond to hazmat fires along with other fires. Other fire departments have to take people off of a fire truck and put them on the hazmat truck to respond. That makes a difference. Now let's take that to the unincorporated areas, the volunteer fire departments. They barely have firefighters. So you're talking about a hazmat assessment. We don't even have nothing to assess. Hello? So your utility infrastructure assessment, I think we talked about that from a electrical grid perspective. Your mutual aid capacity. Guys, mutual aid works for volunteer agencies very well because you can get the city of Little Rock to respond, and they respond to quite a few areas in the outside the city to assist. But you also get the assistance from Little Rock to North Little Rock to Little Rock, those types of mutual aid. But on the volunteer side, you're trying to get people to the fire station to get the fire truck and get to the scene, and then you got Little Rock putting the fire out. And it's not a slap against volunteer fire departments. I'm just sharing with you the facts. Well, Chief, we're always the first on the scene. Those volunteer fire departments, they don't get there quick enough. Well, we're here for mutual aid. So whether they get there or not, let's put the fire out. And then we would train with them. I'm not quite sure they still do that. But the mutual aid capacity, you got to be able to review that. Your specialized training plan, you got to have it because we don't know what to do. We just don't. So you got to be able to determine how we're going to fight this. It's called a pre-fire plan. When we go into these commercial structures or industrial structures, we're looking for what we're going to do when we get there. Where's the standpipe connection at? Where's the alarm panel located? How many people do they have employed here? What type of facility is it? What type of storage do they have? You got to be able to look at all of that. And then developer-funded equipment assessment. They got to be able to pay for this, guys. Pulaski County does not have a paid fire department. Right. I know that's a dream of yours, but they don't have one.
Right.
So you got to be able to, if they in here, let's pay for it. This is what it looks like. But still, you got to do this on the front end and not on the back end.
Yes.
And that hadn't happened.
Yes.
Next slide. So you've got to be able to look at if you're going to do an ordinance, and I know that there's been a drawback, so to speak, from what I've read. I hadn't really followed a whole lot of it. I've seen some stuff going back and forth about Little Rock's ordinance. Some people not satisfied with it, and then you got the state that's got a state law as it relates to it. So, I can say this, and there might be something I don't know. There may be some lawyers in the room that can help us with this, but federal supersedes state, state supersedes city and county. So if there's a way around that to get you something in writing to protect the county, then that's what needs to happen. Because you need something in place. Right now, there's nothing.
Right.
So you're talking about identification of battery chemistry, building a container layout, the emergency shutdown procedures. What does that look like? You've been to a gas station before. You see the red button on the wall. That's emergency shutdown. Something happens, push that button, it shuts everything down. You might not have all the fuel you need to get back home, but you just shut that system down. You got to have that in these environments. And you talk about the hyperscale data centers, the AI campuses, and we talked about the crypto mining all of that. But the codified defensible benchmarks is NFPA 855, stationary energy storage centers. You've got the International Fire Code on energy storage provision, Underwriters Laboratory, 9540, and that's on your energy storage systems testing and certification. You got to have it. Yeah. You can't go out here in your UL 9540A, and that is testing the agent. testing the agent to see if it stops the propagation, see if it stops the thermal runaway. You got to be able to test for that. So that's why I know that there's nothing out there in the market that has been tested to do this.
We are guinea pigs.
Next slide. So, this is not a sale pitch. This is just the work that I've been doing along with some other team members. We have a agent that actually puts the fire out. It stops the thermal runway. But it hadn't been certified by UL yet, so we can't even put it on the market. We can just tell you that it's there and we're working on it. And we're pretty confident that once it's all done, this could be 2 years down the road. We're currently working with Oklahoma State University. They've got one of the largest fire laboratories in the country on helping us get this to market. So we're talking about what it looks like. It encapsulates the toxic gases. It cuts the water demand significantly. And then also it captures the runoff. Right now, if that facility catches on fire now, what happens to the runoff?
That's toxic. That's toxic waste.
Exactly. So we're hopeful that when this test is completed and it's certified, that we've got a solution for this. But this is just to let you know that somebody somewhere is working on this.
But we can't get it.
We can't get it now. You know, I've seen it work. I've seen a lithium-ion battery put in thermal runway, and I've seen two scientists in short pants and flip-flops put the fire out. Now, you can't market that as a fire chief. You can't market that without PPE, but I've seen it happen. So I'm just sharing that with you. This is not a sale pitch. I wanted to give you some good news on top of the bad news. Next slide. Anything? So these are some of the questions that stakeholders are asking. Won't these requirements drive developments to other counties? Major operators already underwrite emergency response upgrades at sites that demand them. Codifying expectations creates predictability.
Right.
For serious developers and filters out undercapitalized projects that would internalize their risk to the taxpayer.
Right.
That's you.
Right.
Our volunteer fire departments handle fires for decades. Why now? They can't handle these guys. There's no way. It's a challenge for municipal fire departments, so it's going to be even a greater challenge for volunteer fire departments. But who pays for the studies?
Right.
The developer. The developer pays for it.
Right.
That's all I have. Judge, if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer
All right.
those.
I know you got questions for Chief. All right, going back.
Thank you for putting on this panel. It's very helpful, very appreciated. Okay. So you're talking about these toxic wastes that can come off in a fire. Do we have any risk assessment on any of that could enter a community? Do we even know what that byproduct is of burning?
No, I do not. And I don't know if there's been any studies or any risk assessments done to even evaluate or talk about how those chemicals are going to affect the water or anything else, the environment.
Yeah.
From the developer perspective. All we can do is talk about what it does from a perspective of carbon monoxide.
Yeah. So from the information I've gathered, there is absolutely no transparency, and we're all at risk with these types of industries in our area.
Until somebody says something different, I can understand you feeling like that.
Okay. Question here. Yes, sir.
So last summer we had like 11 wildfires in one day. It seems like the likelihood of fire is going up. If there is a fire at a data center like this, it seems like we're taking on all the risk. What happens, like who ends up paying for it, like insurance or like You know, what do we end up footing the bill if there is a large scale fire at one of these spaces or something?
I can't speak to that. I don't know if that cost is gonna be borne by the taxpayer or the insurance company that's insuring that facility. I don't have an answer to that, I'm sorry.
We're socializing the risk, but we're not socializing the cost.
I guess that my question is for both speakers and overall. If our representatives are making deals to collect 35 cents on the dollar from the tax base for these data centers, and they're getting all of these incentives for coming into the areas, who benefits? I mean, certainly, I don't know what our legislators are getting out of that, but certainly the constituents aren't getting anything out of that. Who benefits?
I mean, I can't speculate to who benefits.
Well, guess whoever pushed it out on you is the one who gonna get the profit.
I just have a question. You know, when they collect the fees for the tires, when you get your tires changed, where does that money go towards, or can any money be used? Because I know it's like $1 million and something, if not more, in those accounts. Or has it ever been used for some of these studies or for the recycling and all that?
That I don't know, but I can tell you this. When I talk about impact studies, those fees that you would like to see go to something that of this scale should come from that developer in that impact study. So.
Last question, Chief. I know you have more questions. I'm trying to keep it on schedule. Last question, ma'am.
To me, what I see happening is that they are paying less than 35% of cost of anything once it's in there. Who is informing our legislators accurately of what this is actually going to do to you and me as a taxpayer? We're going to pay it for a unit costs $10. We pay the 100%. They pay 35%. That is terrible. They should also have to come up with millions of dollars in the front end just to make it accurately safe.
I won't disagree with that, but
let me simply say this.
Go ahead.
Democrats and Republicans were on the bandwagon. 33 yes. Okay. 30 Democrats and Republicans. Both parties did the okey doke. Okay. Could you give Chief Summers a round of applause for his presentation? One question. Did you hear anything about this when the Google presentation was made to the Little Rock City Board? No. We've had several sessions before the Little Rock Quorum Court, Justice Blackwood. Did anybody say anything about this? No. All of us in here are old enough to remember the Corvair, the Chevy Corvair, and the Ford Pinto. Listen, this thing is bigger than the Corvairs and the Pintos put together. And the truth of the matter is, if a Pinto exploded, the fire department could put it out. But we've now heard a seasoned fire chief says, if this thing catches up, all we can do is come back and watch and see if we can cool it down. We can't put it out. Now, do you want that next to your school? Do you want that next to your neighborhood? And would you build a house in a neighborhood where that factory was? That's what they are trying to do to South Pulaski County, to neighborhoods of black and brown folks, okay? So let's remember that. I gotta get up Richard H. Mays, to talk about, listen, this is what lawyers and regulators ought to be thinking about when we talk about this thing. Richard Mays used to work for the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Richard, come on, talk quickly, because I'm trying to get going. There you go.
Judge, you should know better than to tell a lawyer to talk quickly. I'll do my best.
All right, sir.
I want to start by saying thank you to Judge Griffin for doing this seminar. There have been a lot of meetings held about these data centers, and a lot of them focus on, well, what are the questions? I think most of us know what the questions are. The problem is we don't know what the answers are at this point. So, and there's a lot of them. So I'll try to cover some of the legal aspects of it. As the judge mentioned, I spent some time, about 10 years, with the United States Environmental Protection Agency. I was at one point in that 10 years head of the enforcement program for the entire agency. I saw a lot of ordinances, a lot of statutes, a lot of enforcement actions, consent decrees that we entered into with large companies, some of the biggest companies in the country. And I think I know what it takes to have an enforceable law. The 21st century has arrived in Arkansas. It got here about 3 years ago in the form of some of these, and they have a name, the data processing, digital asset mining, that's what they are. We began hearing about those because they began springing up in some of the smaller communities, places you wouldn't necessarily expect a data mining facility to be, such as in DeWitt and Arkansas County and so forth. And those facilities involve various transaction records, which I'm not sure I understand what they do or what their purpose is other than to create bitcoins, which apparently have a lot of value at this point because the president's family has gotten involved in it and it's gotten very valuable. But they find solutions to mathematical problems, and when they find that solution, they get a bitcoin. I don't understand that, but I tell you, it's very easy to understand the problems that they create.
Yeah.
Noise, water use, and electrical use. Those are the well-known, undeniable uses or consequences of that form of data mining. And there's all sorts of data centers. They're one of them, but they're a one of a kind. It's like having cars, and you have Chevrolets, and you have Fords, and you have Cadillacs, and that sort of thing. The data centers that we're here talking about today are many times larger than those data coin facilities that are out in Arkansas County or wherever. Their problems are multiplied many-fold over the ones that they're created by those centers. And you are totally in your right, and it's your responsibility, in my opinion, as citizens of Pulaski County, to raise your voices as you are by attending these meetings and to demand that the government, the county government, the city government, provide protection for you and for other citizens in the county and in the city by imposing reasonable and enforceable regulations on those data centers.
Yes.
And Judge Griffin, to his credit, has drafted a proposed ordinance. Is it the county or city?
County.
County ordinance, which I've read. I think it's a really good start. I would suggest making it a little more stringent by adding some really stiff penalties, because the people who you're regulating here are big companies. They would consider a $1,000 penalty as a cost of doing business. I mean, they would say, okay, we'll pay that and leave us alone. You have to hit them with some really big penalties, and you have to make it stick to discourage them from violating the restrictions. Before I go any further, hold that for me, will you?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to share with you a cartoon. Here it is. Okay. You probably can't see this, and some of you may have seen it before. I got it off of the internet. I went. As you can see, this is a big hog here, and it's labeled data centers. It's feeding from a trough, and the trough says resources. That would be water, air, electricity, and so forth. And the hog says, after I gorge myself, you can all share in the inevitable byproducts. I'd like to speak just briefly about some of the legal issues here. The legislature in 2023, 2.5 years ago, apparently at the behest of some of these Bitcoin manufacturing centers, adopted a law that is Act 831 of 2023. It's a fairly brief law, and it's called an Act to create the Arkansas Data Centers Act. The name of it is the Arkansas Data Centers Act. But it really doesn't address all data centers.
Right.
It focuses primarily on what are called the digital asset mining businesses.
Right.
Now, that's a data center. It's one form of the data center, but it by no means covers all of the data centers. And it doesn't cover the data centers that we're here talking about, the jumbo data centers, they're called hyper data centers. And there's a provision in the law that makes that pretty clear, actually, because it says that, I need a podium, Judge. It says that a local governmental entity cannot can regulate certain parts of the cannot regulate the asset mining businesses. It says a local community, local government shall not impose different requirements for a digital asset mining business than is applicable to any requirement for a data center. That's pretty clear that there are various categories in the opinion of the legislature of data centers. The asset mining centers are what this law applies to, but it doesn't apply to the large data centers, the hyper data centers. So if your local member of the quorum court or your member of the board of directors of the city tells you the law doesn't allow them to do anything about it, you tell them it does allow it, and that somebody is probably going to be testing this in the very near future.
Right. Right.
The judge, as I said, has proposed an ordinance. I think it's great. I think, and I'm sure the judge is open to making changes that would make it tougher. I've talked to the judge about that. New York State, the legislature in New York State is facing a lot of these same problems here. That's about the only thing we have in common with New York State. But they are facing these problems, and the legislature in New York State has passed a similar law, a similar bill, and they just did it this week.
Yeah.
And they have submitted it to the governor. I don't know if the governor's going to sign it or not. Apparently she hasn't yet, but she's going to have to, or let it become law without her signature. It's very similar to this. And I would think that being New York, they probably will adopt it. So I'm not saying that data centers are inherently bad. I think that they serve the country in a lot of ways. They serve the society in a lot of ways. And in a lot of ways, I think we need them in today's world because it's a complicated world that we live in. As long as we can be assured of several things. One is that it's not going to ruin our lives in other ways, which it certainly has the potential for doing.
Right.
And that it won't take over human decision making. Right. Which is, in my opinion, a distinct possibility. So I think that the judge is on a good journey here. I think he's I admire him for taking the initiative in doing things like sponsoring these meetings. And I encourage all of you to become interested or can maintain your interest in this and stand up for yourselves and your rights and your lifestyle. The government has an obligation to protect you. The government is presented with a dilemma here in some ways. These data centers offer a lot of benefits to cities and counties. Money is a big attraction to a lot of governments because some of them don't have a lot. But there's somebody back there holding up a sign that says money is not worth our health. I agree with that. So that basically is my presentation. I haven't tried to cover all of the specific questions that I know you have, but I'd be happy to try to answer any. I'm a little hard of hearing, so if I don't hear you, I'm sure Judge Griffin, who I don't have any problem hearing at all, will be happy to interpret it.
Questions for Richard Mays? Give him a round of applause, please.
Thank you, appreciate it.
First question.
I wish to be an activist. Can we get a copy of your proposal? I'd like to send it to my state senator and my representatives from my area.
Question was, can she get a copy of my proposals? There are 2 ordinances and 2 resolutions, and yes, you can. Yes, ma'am. We'll make that available to you. Yes, ma'am. Dr. Whitfield, I think I see you in the back. I'm coming back as fast as I can, as fast as my arthritic legs can take me.
Hello, Richard. I appreciate your works, and I'm just wondering, I heard you say earlier that you will likely be pursuing something. Are you looking for people for your class action?
Well, there have been people who have talked to me about taking action. We're talking about it. I would not be surprised if, contrary to my better instincts, that I wasn't involved in some kind of lawsuit over it. I'm getting a little long in the tooth to be doing this, but I can't resist it. It's kind of like the firehouse dog. Every time the bell goes off, the dog jumps on the fire wagon. Yes, ma'am.
As someone from the EPA, what can the federal government and the EPA do to help protect us? What kind of regulations? Could we have inspections? Can they do? Like, what can actually be done to keep them alive?
I was going to mention, and I forgot it, that the federal government is complicating this somewhat. Just this week, the head of the Department of Energy, forget his name, Secretary of the Department of Energy, issued a memorandum to the head of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, encouraging him to take whatever action was necessary to expedite issuance of permits to the data centers.
Wow.
Wow. The federal government is not going to be any help here.
Nope.
The electrical grid the big issue is the electricity and the availability of it. The electrical grid in the United States is basically controlled administratively by about 6 or 7 main agencies. One of them is actually here in Little Rock, the Southwest Power Pool. You've probably heard of that. It's one of the major administrators and overseers of how the electrical grid in the United States is used. And the president said to the president told the Secretary of the Department of Energy to get something going to increase the speed at which these data centers are developed, because the president thinks, and I'm not saying he's wrong, that our national security is tied to that, and that we need to stay ahead of other countries like China. He points out China as being an example, as being challenging us in leading the world in data development and in data management and artificial intelligence. So, that being said, things are going to have to happen fast before some federal action will complicate it and maybe even make it something impossible. They can't do everything, but it's going to make it more complicated, I'll put it that way. Yes, ma'am.
Richard, hey, I have a quick question for you. When I read Act 831, I also was under the impression that it had nothing to do with these large data centers. It only applies to crypto mines, but I keep hearing people say it applies to data centers. Are you aware of any advisory opinions that say that? Like, has the AG issued an advisory opinion that you know of? Thank you.
Thank you. I'm not sure the Attorney General has issued an opinion on this. He may have. The Attorney General's opinions, and I say this with all due respect to the Attorney General, are not given any weight by the courts. Right. The courts have expressly said they're entitled to their opinion, but they don't get any special consideration for it. So the Attorney General has issued an opinion that in another case that I'm involved in about public schools and private schools and whether the LEARNS Act is valid. The Attorney General has said that the FOIA doesn't apply to the private schools. I disagree with him. We're probably going to test that too. So anyway, I don't know, don't care. Alicia?
Okay, so with an attorney in the room, I just want to put this out to the constituents. Act 851 does not imply that the city directors had to sign a memorandum of understanding, that Pulaski County Quorum Court justices signed NDAs. Your legislatures, Republican and Democrat, every single one voted for this. So it's up to us to fight against this, hold everybody accountable, no matter what the prior record was, no matter. And I'm just making sure that that is not part of 851, because that's what we're being told.
Yeah. You raised the issue about these confidential agreements, the non-disclosure agreements. That has certainly been a major factor, in my opinion, regarding that makes the public so suspicious about the what they're proposing to do. They won't tell you because everything is highly secret. I don't know who they're hiding it from other than, I guess, the other data centers. Google's hiding it from Axion or whoever. But our Freedom of Information Act, which applies to agencies and so forth, contains a a provision in it that allows confidential business information to be claimed as confidential if the information is in the possession of the Arkansas Department of Commerce, I think is the agency. It's in the Department of Commerce, and but not otherwise. So if an agency, and most of these cities and counties and have been or have information from the data centers that are interested in locating in their area, and that is claimed as confidential, if they have it, if the city has it, if the county has it, then there's a real question in my mind about whether or not they can enforce that confidential requirement. I think it has to be released if it's not in the possession of the Economic Development Commission.
Last question. One last question. Yes, ma'am. One coming to you. Just a second. Let me so you,
I want to know if there's been any environmental impact studies that have been, in Arkansas on these two things, or are there any studies going on at all besides what the Corps of Engineers is doing for?
Have there been any environmental impact studies that you know about, Richard?
Environmental impact
studies for either of the two data centers?
Okay. Well, environmental impact statements are the usual way you go about finding out whether there is an environmental problem. These laws that I have been referring to as being proposed laws, the New York law, for example, any law here should require the agency, and by the way, the EPA, not the EPA, but the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality has regulations that do require a company or an industry or whatever that's proposing to put in a new facility that's going to be subject to the Clean Water Act, our version of it, or the Clean Air Act, our version of it, to prepare an environmental impact statement for most things. And so that would still apply. The state law applies to these data centers, and the data centers would have to go to DEQ and to the other agencies to get permits for the installation of it. In the case of the Clean Air Act, you have to get your air permits before you can even start construction. So, not so with the Clean Water Act. You can start construction and then get a permit for your water discharges while you're doing it. You just can't discharge without a permit. But in the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, you do have to get a permit before you start construction. So a lot of that will be presumably presented. The environmental assessments would have to be done as part of that.
Please give Richard Mays a lot of applause. Thank you very much. Pulaski County Sheriff Eric Higgins will come now and talk about the public safety law enforcement perspective that we haven't previously heard about. Nobody asked the sheriff, the chief law enforcement officer of the county, what will be the law enforcement impacts of bringing the biggest industrial risk with the biggest public health and safety factors, what they are. Well, guess what? Here he is, Chief Sheriff Higgins.
Thank you. You know, good evening. I'm not going to be too long because I know it's been a long evening and you have some questions at the end. But you could bring up the fire chief slide. You could bring that up and then start talking about the sheriff's office. Because when you have a situation at one of these facilities, we're going to be the first one responding. It's a joke between police and fire that law enforcement, we're the blue canary. Or in our case, we're the gold and tan canary because we arrive on scene and you know if you have toxic chemicals because of we're falling out. So we're going to respond, and a lot of stuff what the chief said is so true about the volunteer fire department. They do a good job. They're responding, but a lot of times we're there first, and we're trying to assist putting fires out. When you look at a situation like this facility, what's the concern? I think one of the main concerns I have is the same concerns that you have, the lack of transparency. When you have a facility being built like this, what is the structure like? How many people are in there? If we have to respond, where are we going to? If there's someone in the facility, if there's a fire and we're getting there, our goal is to get somebody out. We're going to go in. And so there's some concerns that we have. When you look at a structure like this, when you look at an industrial facility, it's considered a critical structure, a critical facility, which means, is that going to be a target? Mm-hmm. Will it be a target for someone to try to disrupt the service that they provide? We don't know what this facility, what type of service it may supply. Is it going to be connected to the health industry? Is it going to be connected to the internet? Is it going to be connected to some other service that if it goes out, it has a significant impact on the community? So what is the threat? We don't know. And so we have a responsibility to assess it. Best case scenario, when you're looking at a facility being built, is just like any other structure. If you're building a home and you have tools out there, equipment out there, and it's stolen, you want the police to respond and do something about it. When you're looking at a massive facility like this, how many people are going to be working on site? What's the equipment there? What's the expectation for our response if there's something there? And I think it's been mentioned before, when you have all these people there that are in construction there, a lot of people coming together, will there be conflict? Is there an expectation for us to respond? Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but Pulaski County covers 808 square miles. And we're out there. I don't have enough deputies as it is. And I've been asking for more deputies for several years, and now we're going to add this facility, which is going to require more of a response. You talk about a fire, and I'm connecting this to what the fire chief said. If there's a fire there, I don't care whether it's the volunteer fire department there, or Little Rock Fire Department there, or whoever else is trying to assist. We remain on scene as law enforcement to secure the scene.
Yes.
So they can do their job. And the chief has said this isn't a couple of hour a response. If you notice, he said this is days response. And so law enforcement is going to be there.
What's the overtime?
And if we're there, then we're not responding somewhere else. If we're there overtime, there's a cost to that. The county's going to pay that cost.
Say it. Say it.
And so we have to be aware, and we have to talk about the facility.
Yeah.
There should be open conversation with us. We know the facility is going to be there. Maybe. But we have to prepare for it. What conversations are we going to have about it? So you have the physical security of the facility. The expectation that we have, they will have some type of private security or alarm system. They aren't law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
We're still going to be responding. If there's a criminal act, we're going to be responding. And it's not just the structure, the actual structure of that building itself. What about the utilities coming into that facility?
Mm-hmm.
Will there be anyone trying to disrupt the services coming into the facility? And will that disrupt the services in the surrounding area?
Say it.
So we have to be able to have an assessment, and the best way to go through the assessment is knowing what's going in, what the plans are before they start, and then walking through that process if they're going to build it, while it's being built, so that we know. Because if we're going to respond, and we hope that we never have an incident of an active shooter or anything like that. The worst case for law enforcement is to walk into a structure of this size and don't know the outlay. We don't know where the personnel will be. Do we know the access points? So I mentioned about the fire department, fire chief's presentation. While he's responding, fire department's responding, dealing with a fire. We're responding to deal with safety. So we still need to know all the access points. How do we get into that facility? So there are a number of concerns that we have, and again, there's no communication. I want to mention also the noise. When people have a problem with noise, they have a noise complaint, who do they call? The police.
Hello.
And we're going to be responding. If you don't know about the noise, there is a small data center not too far from the sheriff's office, 2900 Woods Road. Just come on our parking lot. Get out your car and listen.
Yeah.
When it came active, I pulled up to work one day, and I was wondering, and you know, we're right by the fairgrounds, and there's a railroad track that goes between us and the fairgrounds. And when I got out the car that morning, I said, "Oh, there must be a train on the track. Must be sitting there waiting to go through." And then when I got off that night, I came out. I said, "Man, that train's still sitting on the tracks." and I said, "Man, I guess they're having some issues." And I get there the next day. It wasn't a train on the tracks. It's the noise from the data center. And so if you have any idea about the noise, you can hear that, and it's a constant hum. You just need to be aware of that. What does that do in our community? And I've heard someone at the, or was talking to someone at the Wrightsville event, public forum, and someone said, well, the data centers will most likely follow the rules, the ordinances of the city of Little Rock.
No, they won't.
They don't have to, and I told them that, well, even if they do, come by the sheriff's office and stop on the parking lot and listen to the noise. And so that's not going to be addressed, even if they are following that guidelines, and that is a small facility in comparison to what we're looking at. Like I mentioned, it's the infrastructure, it's the day-to-day security of the facility, it is the construction process of the facility, our security that we will have to maintain or try to provide. Anytime there's business being built, and we get notices, I'll mention to you, even with the Amazon center that they built, and College Station dealt with all the trucks coming in, those delivery trucks, but even during the construction process. And so that's something that we have to consider. We have to consider, what is that going to do? Are we going to have an increased traffic? Is that going to impact the community? And then we have to respond to regulate that traffic. And so it's going to impact us. The ideal situation is for us to have a relationship with the company, to talk about the plans, future plans, the construction, how many people are going to be on site during construction. And we know there's only going to be a small boom of employment for construction. But after it's done, there's going to be a small print of employees there. But we're still responsible if there's something going on there. And so through the whole process, we should be involved. And that's my concern, is the lack of involvement. Just like you want to know, there should be some transparency with law enforcement, with those volunteer fire departments. And then what is my concern is what is the resources are you going to bring to our community? How is it going to benefit? And I know it's been said, and I've heard this about the tax base. Well, really, what is that tax base? Is it property tax? Is it something else? How is the distribution of those funds? How much goes to the county that's going to have to immediately deal with this facility? And we'll have to address staffing for this. The volunteer fire department is going to have to deal with this. We respond to fire, and we may have 3 or 4 different volunteer fire departments responding to a fire. And so you're going to have this here. We have to be prepared. We hope nothing happens. We hope there's no incident, serious incident there. But we need to be prepared for it. You don't wait until you have a problem and then figure out how you're going to respond to it.
Right.
And so I'm deeply concerned about what the needs will be. I know that we'll have to have a presence. You know, my responsibility is security of the county, all of the county. And I'm concerned about security of that area, of those people who are going to be working there, people who are going to be driving through there. And there's others I am concerned personally about, are we going to have waste there? Is there some type of risk to the staff that's going to respond to a fire or any other incident? Terrorist act there? We're going to be responding to those things. We hope we don't have those things. But we need to be prepared to know where things are, how do we respond to it, and if they're going to have security, we need to have a relationship with their security team so that we can address any concerns that may arise.
Sheriff Higgins. Questions for Sheriff Higgins? Questions for Sheriff Higgins? Yes, ma'am. You're my dependable questioner.
Who is going to be in charge of handling the emergency response when we have severe weather and part of the facility is damaged by a tornado? Are they putting together an evacuation plan? Because it sounds like if there's a fire or if there's tornado damage that blows chemical debris around, the area will need to be evacuated. If we don't have a hazmat team, can we make them responsible for installing one and paying for one? And can they put aside a fund ahead of time? Can we force them to put aside a fund to make sure that we are protected as best that we can be and that the emergency response is sufficient for that area, especially since FEMA has been gutted?
That was not one question, but 5. Which one do you want to take first?
You know, when you look at the response, if you have a tornado response or anything like that, law enforcement, we respond to every single emergency. And there have been tornadoes, there have been strong winds in the areas. We respond to all of those, and we will respond if there's an incident or tornado at that site, some type of destruction, some type of weather incident. We are going to respond, and we will try to assess and make the area as safe as possible. And that includes, you know, the danger to any surrounding area, the elementary school, the community nearby. We're going to be responsible. If there's an evacuation needed, we're the ones that's going to be knocking on doors and driving around and trying to help people get out. We'll also be trying to coordinate with any facility where we can recommend people go to for safety. You know, where they're going to go somewhere to be there through the night. We're going to be responsible for coordinating all of that and working with other first responders.
Thank you. So what does this mean to our budgets that are coming up? What also does this mean to me as a taxpayer? Are my taxes going up? Are my utilities going up?
Yep.
And everything else going up?
Yep.
So I think, you know, I'm not going to speak about utilities. If I had to guess, I'd probably say yes, but that's not my wheelhouse. But what does it do to the budget? The county has limited resources. I need more deputies now, and just Blakewood knows that and has been trying to help me to get more deputies, but that costs money. And so if we don't have any additional resources, then something's going to have to give. Either we're not going to have the personnel to respond, or the county's going to have to cut back in other areas. And so it's going to impact, it will impact the budget in our ability to respond unless there's some other revenue stream to assist the county in providing the services, just like the fire service assisting the volunteer fire departments with equipment, also assisting us with equipment. And if we're responding to a facility like that that's a problem, then I may need to look at what equipment I have for my people as responding, what safety equipments I have.
Sheriff Higgins, I just want to thank you for so much of what you do to protect our community with integrity. I also want to say that being someone in your neighborhood, I hear the noise all the time. And when that did come out, it was frustrating because the notification that our neighbors received, I went to multiple places to protest it, and everywhere I went, they had relocated. Mm-hmm. No number was available. But I wanted to ask about the money question. Along with having more employees, could you speak to the finances that would come into the psychological effects that all of this is having on personnel? What type of other resources you might need as far as training as it relates to your staff being understaffed right now?
Mm-hmm. Well, obviously, we try to deal with mental health services, and we have we try to have some resources to help our people, and we work with UAMS and other organizations to try to provide some services for our folks on the stress level that it creates for the staffing when you're short-staffed, and what it does for your people. So we are trying to address that. You know, of course, you can always use more mental health services, counselors, to engage with your staff without having to go through the sheriff or any of the command structure. It's always good to have that outside source for them as well.
Last question for Sheriff Higgins.
First, I want to thank everybody for having this meeting today and all of that, but I wanted to ask, with this raising the utility cost and on all of those things, energy, water, so on and so forth, this is going to put a lot of people unhoused. So what are we going to do when these people become unhoused? Are we going to criminalize them, arrest them, send them to some detention center? What is going to happen with that?
Help me out with the question again.
What's going to happen to the people who are going to be unhoused because utility bills go up and the people can't afford to pay for it, and so they're going to be unhoused? What's going to happen to them? Will they become criminalized? Will they become unhoused and therefore liable to be picked up because they're wandering or treated as vagrants or treated as hazards simply because they can't pay for the costs that we've driven up?
Well, being unhoused is not a crime. And our hope is that we can help people to find some place, and that's where the community has to come together. Mm-hmm. The sheriff's office is about trying to help people. And just a little sidebar, while we have food packs in our patrol cars, 3 days worth of non-perishable foods that we give out to people who have food needs. And so we will continue to try to work with organizations like VAN to be able to connect people with resources to try to help them. It's not a crime to be in that situation. It's our role as a sheriff's office is try to help them and connect with resources. And I'll say, if anyone knows of organizations that can help the unhoused people that we come in contact with, we'd love to have the information so that we can always add that to our belt so that we can help people.
Thank you, Sheriff Higgins. Thank you, Sheriff Higgins. Thank you, Chief Summers. Thank you, Richard Mays. Thank you, Al Drinkwater. Thank you, Junior Checo. This video you saw, this video you're watching was shot on drone footage by Chico Junior Telez and by Mike Poe. Please watch it. Turn the volume up. Turn the volume up. And I'll have some closing remarks after that. PowerPoint, 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 the action PowerPoint. I cannot leave you without action step, without an action plan. I have an ask. I have a call out, okay? It's called action, A-C-T-I-O-N, A-C-T-I-O-N. It's an action framework. First of all, we've got to have advance notice. We've got to insist on it. There's got to be community input. You've heard transparency so many times you should be able to spell it in your sleep. There hasn't been any. It has to start before we get news that people have taken the land. There has to be infrastructure planning. You can't force people to have to live around something that their own public safety people cannot even protect them from. There has to be oversight. There has to be an independent review, not just a chamber of blanking commerce. And let's understand this is about neighbors protecting neighbors. We are all Sweet Home. We are all Wrightsville. We are all Pulaski County. This is our home. One county, one community, one future is not just a slogan, it's reality. Because the truth of the matter is, if there is a fire on a 760-acre plot, a mile from an elementary school where hundreds of children are going, a school named after Daisy Bates, we are all ought to be something more than potential mourners. We should be proactively saying, no way you do this to us. You don't do it to our neighbors. You don't do it to their children. You don't do it to our old people. You don't do it to our teachers. You don't do it to the people who protect us. You don't do it to the people who ride up and down the highways. We haven't even talked about the fact that if you're going to build something like this, if there is an emergency after you build it, guess what? You don't have a highway structure big enough to service it. Hello? Now, the time to do this kind of planning is not after they've already told you we're going to start breaking ground. Before they turn over the first dirt, we should have had these conversations. And the reason we haven't had these conversations is because elected officials decided that they would rather keep secrets of corporations than protect the people who voted for them. So please, before you leave here, make yourself and the rest of us a promise. You will not do what happens when we look in the mirror. We look in the mirror and then we forget what we look like after we left. Hello? Remember what you saw. Remember what you heard. You heard a seasoned fire professional say, if this thing catches fire, nothing that I know will put it out. You heard the chief law enforcement of the county says, if it catches fire, my deputies are going to be the first ones to fall out. There has not been a single budgetary analysis at Pulaski County or the city of Little Rock about how much taxpayers will have to pay to service this. So before somebody gets a tax incentive to build this, we should have an idea what the bill is that we're going to be paying them to bill for. Please, action, remember, is the infrastructure conversation. Talk about action. Now, the last thing I want to tell you is everything you have seen today is going to be on YouTube. It's on YouTube. This is live streamed, to include the video. And so I want to thank Chico Telez. I want to thank Mike Poe in the back, for putting the video together. I want to thank Steve Novorchek for planning this. I want to thank Valerie and Charles and Claudius and Mike and Steve for helping to make this happen. I want to thank you for being present. I want to thank Coach Shelby for being here, who's running for governor. I want to thank Kelly Gray for being here, for running for Secretary of State. I want to thank Julie Blackwood for being here because she's the only JP. She's the only JP who signed off on all of the measures I drafted. There are 15 of them, 14 now. Only one signed off. Hello? Sponsor. Chris Jones is here, running for Congress. Thank you. Dr. Chris Jones. Tommy Branch is here. Tommy Branch is going to be an oncoming Justice of the Peace. He's going to succeed Steve Persons on the quorum board. I did not sponsor this just because I'm running for county judge. I did because I'm running for county judge, but not just because I'm running for judge. I live in this county. I have 2 grandchildren. 2 grandchildren. A little boy who's not even a year old, a little girl who's 2.5 years old. I do not want anybody's child to grow up in a county that has this kind of threat. I don't want my child, my grandchildren, yours, not just because I'm running for county judge, because that's not being a good neighbor. When you leave here, please tell people, please tell your justice of peace, if you cannot vote against this, we know how to vote against you. These things are on a wetland. This is a wetland. The Aveo project is running across 3 federally protected streams. Please, the folks of Sweet Home and Wrightsville, not just the ones who need it. We all need this. So please, let's go. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.